Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 31 of Elves, Rings, and Nerdy Things. My name is Sean. I'm one of your co-hosts here with my other co-host, Sam. Sam, how are you?
Oh, I'm okay. Happy Sunday. Or happy day of recording, whenever we happen to be recording.
It actually is Sunday today. So normally we record on Sundays. Every once in a while we do a Monday. But today is the actual day. We're starting a new topic with episode 31. We're going to cover the first season of Andor on Disney+. Sam, did you watch Rogue One?
I did.
And what were your overall impressions, non-spoiler territory, of Rogue One?
I thought Rogue One was the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. I liked Rogue One a lot. In retrospect, I will say this, I'm not afraid to admit that following my consumption of other reviews that were more critical, I may have tempered that. I still think it's superior to the movies in the prequel trilogy. Thought it was better than The Last Jedi because it wasn't offensive to me as a moviegoer. Yeah, Rogue One was a good, fun Star Wars movie. I say fun, even though, yeah, a lot of people died, but it was fun to watch. I liked the action in it. The Battle of Scarif is like one of my favorite sequences in Star Wars. But yeah, I like Rogue One.
Okay. I as well enjoy Rogue One. I'm going to go so far as to say the first season of Andor, I think, is the best Disney Star Wars material. Now, I've seen the entire first season. You haven't. And I don't know if that's a hot take for me to say or not, because I know people are in love with at least the first two seasons of The Mandalorian. And season 3 kind of lost some people. And I think everybody has panned Book of Boba Fett pretty universally as not great. And then we have other material like Ahsoka coming up. If you're into the cartoons, there's The Bad Batch, which is really good, and Clone Wars. So there's a bunch of Disney material that's been out. But to me, this first season of Andor is the peak of Disney Star Wars.
Interesting. Okay. What did you think? You liked Rogue One.
I did, yeah. I thought it was great. It was how Disney could show that it could be Star Wars without lightsabers.
Except for that one sequence at the end.
Except for the sequence at the end, but that wasn't necessary. Like, that didn't make Rogue One a good movie.
No.
It helped.
I thought, that sequence, I thought it was badass. I liked it. I think a lot of the criticism out there of Disney Star Wars is, and this was especially true with Rogue One, is like, oh, it's fan service. It's you stuff things in there so that people are like, oh, it's Darth Vader. Oh, it's an AT-AT walker, but it's a slightly different AT-AT walker. I don't really have a problem with the quote unquote fan service stuff. And I'll say this much so far. And this podcast is about episode 1 of the season of the series Andor. Episode 1 included no fan servicey things as far as I could tell. Maybe a closer watch would push back, but I'm okay with the fan service stuff because I am a fan of Star Wars and I like to see the cool things in Star Wars when they're appropriate. It's like, it was appropriate that Darth Vader, for me, it was appropriate that Darth Vader was in the end of Rogue One because he
Spoilers,
shows up.
man.
This is Rogue One. We can spoil Rogue One. It's been out for like 4 years.
Yeah, not the movie though. I said non-spoiler stuff for Rogue One.
Okay,
and then you drop some spoilers.
Okay, so the fact that Darth Vader is in Rogue One it should not be a spoiler. But there was stuff in the movie that was new, kind of Darth Vader lore that we hadn't seen before that was cool. And then there was that scene at the end with Darth Vader was it was a cool action sequence. It was a little disjointed from the rest of the action of the film because it kind of departed from the people that we'd spent the entire movie following. So in that sense, it was a little disjointed, and you could say that was an excessive dose of fan service. I think some of the use of old footage it should be regarded as a cool nod to those original actors, and the fact that those were many of the same people who would then turn around and their characters would appear in episode 4. But anyway, I liked Rogue One. I think we talked in the past, especially in the D&D movie conversation about how you can have different types of movies. You can have the heist movie, you can have the kind of espionage movie, you can have a straight up action movie or a mystery, things like that. Rogue One was a good way of doing that in the Star Wars universe. Slightly different from the kind of science fantasy heroic journey movie. And I'm looking forward to, in Andor, at least this is my expectation, that it would be kind of more that kind of the espionage, the underbelly, the slightly morally ambiguous, if not kind of anti-heroic aspect of the rebels, and specifically the title character. Now, I don't know if episode 1 delivered on that or even really gave sufficient taste of that, but we can talk about that.
So for an overarching view of season 1 of Andor, yes, you're going to get that stuff. Did episode 1 give you that? No, because it was all backstory on Andor in particular, and it was world building. The very broad story of Andor is the birth of the rebellion, and we see that throughout the entire first season. So you may have been dissatisfied with episode 1, but I think at the end of the season, you're going to turn around and enjoy it.
Okay. So we should talk about episode 1 specifically. And then what I like is this emerging dynamic where you are the master and I am the student. You've seen all of season 1 of Andor.
Twice.
I've only seen episode 1. You've seen it all. You've seen everything twice.
Yeah, I watched through it twice. I watched through it by myself, and then I watched through it with Carly.
Okay. So you are
and now I'm watching through for a third time for the podcast.
Okay, so you are a confirmed Andor master, and you've seen more of the Disney Star Wars, so you have more of that feel. I should say I love Star Wars, but for me, I'm an original trilogy guy, and I'm specifically a New Hope and Empire Strikes Back guy. The other Star Wars stuff is good. I will watch it, seeing it all in the theater, but
you're not absorbing all of the different cartoons and shows and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I watched the Clone Wars show. Well, I love the Clone Wars anime, like the really short 15-minute ones. Those are just fun. I like those. Those were fun. The Clone Wars extended series, it was just too much. And maybe that's because I tried to binge it and I just couldn't get into it. But I'm a little bit more skeptical of the Disney Star Wars. But let's jump into Andor. You as the master.
Recap the episode. Up, yeah. So episode 1, we meet Andor, Cassian Andor. The name of the show is Andor. We meet Cassian on a planet, a rain-soaked planet, and he goes into what seems to be a brothel, and he is asking around for a woman from Kenari. During this sequence, we find out that this woman from Kenari that he's looking for at this brothel is his sister. He gets into a little bit of a tiff with 2, we find out to be security guard individuals for Morlana 1. When Cassian leaves, finding out that his sister had departed this brothel some time before, not saying where she was going and not giving her real name, he gets assaulted by the 2 individuals, Morlana 1 security guards, and he ends up killing both of them. The first one on accident, and then realizing he can't leave any witnesses, the second one on purpose. He leaves, goes back to his homeworld of Ferrix, where he meets some of his other friends who all seem to be in the, the black market scavenging trade.
I didn't write notes for this episode, partially because it was me watching. It was interspersed with providing some childcare. But if I had written a note about this, it would have been an entire planet of junk dealers, seemingly. Yeah, like an entire. It's like everybody is Watto from episode 1.
It's like a scrapyard.
Yeah, there you go, giant scrapyard planet.
Yeah. So he goes back and meets with some people. He has conversations. He talks about people money. He talks about trying to sell a device to one of his former friends who runs a scrapyard there. And she talks about calling somebody, a dealer, to come buy this piece of equipment that Cassian has. We cut back to the detectives of Morlana 1, that security company. They are trying to discover who killed the 2 security guards, and the supervisor for the detective says, hey, just make it look like an accident. Clearly they just got into a fight and were killed. They were pretty much scumbags anyway, so not a big deal. But then this lieutenant takes it upon himself to conduct an investigation on his own. He discovers that someone was looking for somebody at the brothel from Canary, discovers that there's a link to Ferrex, and then begins the process of looking for Cassian, but he doesn't know who he is yet. We also have cutbacks of Cassian's, what appears to be his childhood, on some planet speaking a foreign language that I believe isn't even translated. Am I correct in that?
You are correct. It's all
Yeah.
just kind of gibberish, but in the
Yep.
subtitles, it says speaking Qurani.
Yep. So you get the hint, the idea that it's a young Cassian. We see a ship crash, and a bunch of the children seem to be going to inspect and see what's going on with it. And our episode pretty much ends with all of that kind of being up in the air. We know Cassian wants to sell a piece of equipment that was stolen. We have detectives trying to find him in Ferrex and connecting him to the murder. And we have this background of his childhood. Everything is really open and up in the air at this point. And like I was telling you at the beginning of the episode, it is all just backstory, background, backdrop for what we're going to get in the rest of the season.
So would you say that the other episodes of the season are different? Like, are they more focused in a way? Because there didn't seem to be like a real arc to the episode. And I think that, so I'll just tell the listening audience,
Well,
I did not react positively to this episode.
Tell them what you told me at the beginning before we started recording.
I couldn't understand anything. And this
not in terms, you said more specifically in terms of they were mentioning place names and people that you didn't know.
So there was, sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, which is an understandable critique, but like in anything, if this wasn't Star Wars and it was a random sci-fi show, they're going to be mentioning names of people and places that you don't know. So do you go into all fan or sci-fi content not liking something because you don't understand the place names?
No.
Or are you more in particular judgy of this because it's Star Wars and you want them to do places that you already know?
No, I like going to new places, but I like.
So are you saying you are not a fan of expanding the Star Wars universe and you want to maintain Dagobah, Yavin?
I find it really tiresome that
I'm just kidding. I'm being
when we go to places that we've already been to before, right? Like for instance, you've got this entire galaxy, right? And that's one thing where the Clone Wars show did a decent enough job of going to different planets on a regular basis. Now, what I don't like let me say this. In a science fiction fantasy setting, you should, or even just kind of an adventure film, you want to have a fish out of water character to whom things are being explained so that the audience can follow along. The original Star Wars did this really well because the droids were strangers to Tatooine, and Luke Skywalker was living on this planet who he describes as, if there's a bright center of the universe, you're on the planet which it's farthest from. And you start getting a sense of what these locations are and who the big actors are. You also have the opening crawl that sets up the conflict. So my objection was, immediately we're on a planet that, it's fine that I've never heard of it before, but I don't even really know what it's called. It was like, it's unclear what does this big company do? He called it like a company town, but what's the business? What's like the business of the company? And then they immediately jump into using slang terms or like abbreviations of the company. So it was just a little too, the world building aspect of it. They did a really good job writing the characters as if the characters were actually interacting with each other. But they also need to remember that there's an audience, and this is episode 1. And so it's okay to spell things out a little bit. So in the conversation between the junior detective and his superior, that would have been an opportunity to say, like, the Empire has charged us with delivering X units of rocket fuel, blah, blah, blah. Or, we're supposed to be, we're responsible for whatever on this planet. It's clear that there's an aspect of security, but like, why do people even exist there to begin with? What's the charge of this company? Are they just a security company, or are they like if it's a company town, it's not just, you don't just provide security for the sake of providing security, you provide security because there's some economic activity happening that needs to be aimed. So I think it's little things like that where
but this is where it didn't really bother me.
Okay.
Because in that instance, what I needed to know in that conversation that I did learn was the detective was talking to his higher up, and his higher up is saying, make this look like an accident. Because when I go back to the Empire and have a meeting with them and tell them my crime statistics, I don't want the Empire here. I want to be able to keep them away. So to me, it's a power dynamic thing. I don't need to know anything about the economic activity. To me, it's an independent system who's operating outside of the Empire at the moment, and they don't want the Empire's attention, having the Empire think that they need to come here and take over. Okay. So to me, that was the story that I needed, and I was satisfied with it.
So you just described basically the position of Lando Calrissian in The Empire Strikes Back.
Sure, but different.
Yeah, well, different. Yes, but I didn't need to know what they were doing in the Cloud City on Bespin, but it was a mining operation. I know that what mining, it's extractive. You just need to be there and do this thing. It makes sense why there would be some sort of like industrial parts of this facility and why it's potentially lucrative. It's like a one word thing. Likewise for the junk dealer planet, like. Is it literally a junk dealing planet? Like their opening sequence reminded me of Wall-E. You had the little robot like driving through huge mounds of debris. So it's little things like that where if you're there, you could do slightly more to build out your universe, and it would help people like me who are old and distracted.
Help some people.
Yeah, help some people. And earlier, the first thing I says, I literally could not understand what they were saying, and maybe I'm getting hard of hearing, but I think this is a phenomenon in modern television and cinema where sound is supposed to be kind of muffled or whatever because it's more realistic, it's more gritty, but it just makes things that much harder to follow, and it's doubly so when there are Star Wars names and then techno babble, and you have like the first time he said. The device that he has, what is it? The S9 or the NS9 Star Path module. I was like, that was basically gibberish the first time he said it. And then I watched it again with closed captioning and I understand it. And I still don't know what it really does. I mean, I can put some context clues. It was the thing that Kylo Ren got in the Rise of Skywalker to navigate through the lightning field in order to find Exegol or something along those lines. But I think that's my old man shakes fist at old man yells at cloud moment with this. Is just like I couldn't understand what they were saying, and I didn't. And even if I did understand what they were saying, I wasn't hearing enough about the context for what are these locations and why do they matter. Like I didn't understand anything about is he living on that old ship? Like that, is that his house or is there a different house?
No, he was borrowing it.
He's borrowing the empty ship, and that's different from he stole the ship or he borrowed the ship from the shipyard.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens at the very end of the episode
because he goes back to it the next day and says I'm going to borrow it again, and he's like, no, the guy at the shipyard, his friend, is saying no more deals, no more favors, you're not borrowing it tonight. So he's borrowing the ship, and then
he's also like living in an old ship seemingly, and then but somebody references his house and his mom, and like there's just too many things that are talked about and not shown. I think that is one of the issues that I have, is that if you reference a location that is proximate to the characters and other characters that have seemingly important relationships with the main character, you could show them in order to establish the world in which the protagonist lives, so that then we either want him to protect those people or protect that location. It's similar to again, I mean, we're talking about Star Wars. We know that Luke Skywalker is living with his aunt and his uncle. This is their homestead. We know that it's kind of hard scrabble. He wants to leave. They want him to stay. Like, we know what the conflict that exists between those characters, but also the emotional attachment. We get references to his father, and then that's the emotional core of the first act is Luke Skywalker kind of severing his tie to the homestead. But here it's like there are relationships, but it's unclear. Like, I also thought that I don't remember her name. Bix, is that the woman, the mechanic? Mm-hmm. So to me, she is the little girl in the flashbacks. She looks like the little girl in the flashbacks who in the village, the one who wakes him up, who says Kassa, and to like wake him up at the beginning to point out the ship that's crashing, and then the one at the end who I'm assuming doesn't want him to go on this expedition or wants to go with him as he departs with the group of the Lost Boys to go find the crash landed ship. Is Bix that girl, or is that girl his sister?
We're led to believe that's his sister, not Bix. Okay.
So but to me, the Bix looks like that girl. And I also like don't quite understand the whole Lost Boys tribe. Like, there are no adults in the area. So are they orphans that kind of are grouping together?
I mean,
I'm making some assumptions here because I've watched movies and TV before. So like there's some common tropes, but.
So this is what we might need to do. Like recording an episode 1 Andor, we might need to do the whole first season, because the things you're complaining about.
Yeah, they get resolved.
Yeah, you're going to see it in episode 2.
Yeah,
you didn't see it in the first 30 minutes of the first episode. So, I mean, the mom's house is referenced, but we don't see it in episode 1. But I'm almost positive you see it at the very beginning of episode 2.
So, yeah, I mean, and I think this is another one of those. We talked about this with Amazon Lord of the Rings in our most recent podcast. When you're guaranteed a full 5 seasons, or you're guaranteed a season or 2 whatever it is, you don't do the screenwriting things that are necessary in order to actually build your world and flesh out your characters. So
but I don't think that doesn't apply to this, though.
Why not?
Because I'm pretty sure they said season 2 is going to be the last season, that it was only planned for a 2-season run.
Well, yeah, but most shows, you don't even get a 1 season. You make a pilot, and then you get a season, and then you get a second season.
Like 15 years ago, pilots were a thing. I don't think it's a thing anymore.
No, I agree, and I don't necessarily think that's a good thing, or that doesn't lend itself to crafting singular episodes of television. That, especially the first episode of a series, this would make sense if this were the first 30 minutes of a movie. And then we see the mom, and then we get to know these other characters, and some of the things that didn't make sense initially start making sense. But in this new paradigm where, I stopped watching episode 1 when it was over, but I could have easily just gone into episode 2 and episode 3. I think they're only 30 minutes or something like that. So it's not as if it would have been a huge investment of time. But if you're writing a show in that context, it is easier to kind of slip into this more ambiguous storytelling style where things can be unresolved in a way that would be in a traditional television would be very unappealing to an audience. And that was I think that was the sensation that I experienced. Was this is a show, this is episode 1 in a series which was designed from the start to be a series, and so there's things that it doesn't need to do that a traditional show or a movie would have to do in its first episode or in its first act.
Yeah, we just came away with 2 different experiences on this first episode.
It's crazy.
Like, every problem that you're outlining that you had didn't faze me or affect me at all.
Yeah.
Well, I was able, and I don't want to say suspend disbelief and just take it, but that's pretty much what I did. Well, like when they're talking about, oh, let's go to Ferrix, I'm like, yeah, let's go to Ferrix.
Yeah.
And like your need for a little bit more information, I just didn't have. So like needing to know what that Morlana 1, what the business was, I didn't care. Just give me the dynamic between the Empire and this security company. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe the dynamic between the Empire and the security company is fleshed out in future episodes where there is an Imperial presence and we start to understand what the stakes are. But it's also really easy to do that in a very quick manner that makes sense, that would make sense in the world if you have a superior talking to a subordinate about the stakes, like just one word about the business that they're in. That would do it.
But to me, you don't need it because it's not the business that they're in. It's we don't want the empire here. Like that's all I need to know. It doesn't even have to be a business planet. It could just be like a democracy planet. Like think of if there was an Earth security company who is like overseeing the planet.
So
and there's a galactic empire that we don't want here on Earth. Do we have a specific purpose on Earth? Do we mine gold for the empire? No.
But now you're getting into the thing, the Achilles heel of Star Wars world building is that every planet is reduced to one location on that planet and then one activity.
I mean, yes and no. Kashyyyk.
Wookiee Village.
Or Kashyyyk, if you prefer.
Wookiee Village.
Not necessarily. Not if you watch the cartoons.
Okay, sure.
Cartoons give way more context.
So does the Star Wars Holiday Special, but no one will ever watch it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I don't care what Morlana 1's business is.
Okay, here's a question.
I want that dynamic. They don't want the Empire coming in and taking over because they are feasibly can't handle it. Like, that's all I needed. And I was sold.
Yeah. Maybe I need to go back and watch this again. Because usually when we talk about something, we do watch it twice. So you've now watched this episode 3 times and you've watched the whole series. So you have all of the benefits of hindsight and repetition. And I've only seen it the one time. And to be quite honest, I was partially distracted because of the fact that my baby needs to be rocked a lot. But this is a question for you as the master here. I'm the student learning at you're learning at your knee. Morlana.
You're not groveling enough for me.
I'm not. I will certainly not be groveling. That's for sure. I will be peppering you with questions. Morlana 1 is a planet.
Mm-hmm.
Morlana 4 is also a planet. There are 4 Morlanas? Am I led to believe this?
It's like a system, yeah.
A system. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Ferrix is also
a
planet in the same system because they reference a sublight vehicle leaving Morlana 1 going to Ferrix.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay.
And they also mention in this episode that the security company has oversight over Ferrix,
but not presence.
Because it's in the system. They don't have a presence because, and one of the people at the computers makes a reference to saying the people in Ferrix do things their own way.
Yeah.
So that's why there's no presence there. And that's why this lieutenant is like, or this detective is saying, we can go there. We technically oversee them. Yeah. So why aren't we going to investigate? So
here's another question. So this company, the name of which is not memorable, but it's like pre-call something. I can't remember.
Do you remember? I don't remember. Not off the top of my head.
See, that's a problem, right? We should remember what it's called. Like,
oh, come on. There's so many things in Star Wars where I have to hear it like 4 times before I'm like, okay, yeah, I remember this.
You know, it would be, I mean, I guess you can't really do this in Star Wars because they use a different script, but like, do you know the name of the company in the Alien franchise?
No.
Weyland-Yutani, but it's written on everything. Like it's all the ships and all of the equipment and all the crates and everything have like Weyland Corp or Weyland-Yutani written on it. So it's like, you remember that. And then when the character Weyland makes an appearance, it's like, oh, I know who that is. You can't really do that in Star Wars because of the convention that the Star Wars writing is not English. But yeah, it would be that's one thing. Like I can't remember the name of the corporation, but is it supposed to be just a security company? It's like a private military contractor, basically.
I mean, to me, it's like this company that has their own security wing.
So the company is not just security; it's some other function.
To my understanding, yeah.
Like they have multiple revenue streams.
I'm sure they didn't go into that much detail. See, that's the thing. Like you just want so much extra. Like I feel like you would feel a lot better about this if you read the Andor book first and then watched the show and had all the context provided for you.
Yeah, I mean,
like your expectation of what they needed to provide, like this wouldn't have been a 40-minute episode. This would have been a movie.
Yeah, and I think some of it is just like for me, I don't know. I recognize that I am kind of split in my in certain aspects of my fandom of not just Star Wars but everything's like where I in this, for instance, I don't actually want to know what the company does, and I don't want to know like what their revenue generation mechanisms are and their revenue model and their profit and loss statement and all that. But I at least need to know, are these just glorified security guards? Is this like an entire planet that is owned by a company? Is it they work for the Empire, they work with the Empire could come in? Are they like, the guy is going to report at a conference with the Empire, so there is a relationship there. He's not actually like Lando at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, where he's 100% independent by himself, and then his situation is that the Empire is coming in and actually taking over. Here, it's like the Empire's already kind of overseeing what they're doing, just not on the ground on a day-to-day basis. So there's like these little things of the.
You also have to remember the time frame of where we're at in the Star Wars universe. The Empire is still new, relatively fresh in the whole scheme of things. So at this point, the Empire hasn't expanded to all of the different corners of the galaxy that they have by the time of Return of the Jedi or A New Hope.
So that's a good question, because Haley watched this with me and she had a couple questions, one of which was, does Darth Vader work for the Empire?
Yes.
And I was like, yes, he does. Is that a serious question? But love her. But her other question was, when does this take place? And I thought at the beginning it said BBY 5. So 5 years before the Battle of Yavin, right? Am I correct in that?
I believe so, yeah.
So
this leads right into the beginning of Rogue One.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that over
the end of season 2, I believe.
Okay, so I'm assuming that we're going to watch Cassian Andor go from kind of this underworld figure, trying to make ends meet, and eventually he becomes the character that we see in Rogue One, where he's a spy assassin for the rebels. But 5 BBY is like, I can't remember what's his name? Luke Skywalker is 18, 19 years old at the Battle of Yavin.
So at this point, he's 13. So
13,
this is
13, 14. So the Empire has been around for 13 or 14 years. Yeah.
That's for the Empire to get to every corner of the galaxy and oversee every planet in the mid rim. And what's the
outer rim?
No, not the outer rim. What's the closer?
Galactic core,
like Coruscant. So yeah, that's where we're at in the time frame. And this is a long way just to say, yeah, all I need to know is the whole concept of they don't want the Empire coming in and taking over and losing autonomy. They have autonomy at the moment. That's everything I need to know.
Yeah. I think, but I hate to keep being a nitpicker here, but do they actually have autonomy if this like.
Yeah, they do, because all they do is report their crime statistics. And if they can keep fudging the numbers like the director is trying to do, then they can keep the Empire out of there.
Okay, so in my mind, that is, if the only thing that you're reporting is the crime statistics, then you are a small piece in a larger, like in a larger setup, right? In a larger organization. Because the only thing that more than just crime and crime prevention happens in a society. So we saw a large city. Are there other people who also work for the corporation or who work for different corporations that are providing reports on different activities? Like, what's their meeting cadence? Is this a bi-weekly thing? Is this a quarterly report where you're looking at the reviews? I mean, I know in most law enforcement settings, CompStat is a weekly activity. Is that what we're talking about here? Because he seems like it's pretty routine meetings. Like, I'm leaving this morning to go to, talk, and then, you got to give a short update. Brevity is the point of these updates. So it's just like these little things. Like, if they're going to insert this like bureaucratic angle in the show, at least put it into its proper context. Because the guy sitting in that room is not the planetary governor, right? He's just a flunky. So where in the hierarchy is he? Who is his boss? Why is he reporting directly to the regional imperial command? It's little things like that. I need to know where we all sit.
The next episode you guys might hear might be the season 1 recap of Andor, just because like you have so many, like most of the things you're saying, I have full-fledged responses to, but I can't because it's all spoiler stuff.
Okay, so we should probably.
So what I will say is, like all of this Morlana 1 conversation, after episode 2, you might never go to the planet again in the rest of the season.
Oh, okay. Well,
like the focus shifts away from all of the stuff you're complaining about to what Andor is doing. We go to Coruscant and we see like the beginning of the rebellion begin to flourish. We see some spy stuff. We come back to Ferrix a lot because it's a very key place in the story, being Andor's homeworld. But yeah, I mean, most of our episode, we're like 40 minutes in. We've been talking about this security company in Morlana 1, and they pretty much.
I need to see a hierarchy. I need to see the org chart. Give me a couple of slides on their prior year performance.
Yeah, hold on.
Where's the About Us page on their website?
Let me answer your question on number of episodes.
Yeah, because we got to figure out how to chunk this. Because I think you're right. One episode is probably not enough to talk about, especially for something that's been out for a while.
There's 12 episodes.
Okay, so we've got 11 left. Let's do like 3 episodes at a time.
Yeah, so that would give us episodes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then we'll. Yeah, I like that because episode 10 is my favorite episode, and we'd be doing a focus on that. And then 11 and 12, the last 2 episodes are like the culminating. They're basically a 2-part episode.
Okay, that works. That's perfect.
Episodes 11, 12. And like I said, I have so much more I would like to say.
All right.
About the season. But I want you to know, Sam, your complaints are heard and I respect them.
There's a big but coming.
I'm not even gonna say but. I just disagree with the level of problem you have with them.
Okay.
Like I understand the wanting to know more about this planet and Morlana 1 and security company, but where you needed to know information about it, I was happy with what I was given.
I guess maybe that's because for the amount of screen time that we spent with these company folks, my thinking was this is going to be more central to the story. And that's why I wanted to know why.
I'll say the young detective with all of the initiative to investigate.
Mr. Career man.
Mr. Tailored suit guy.
It's still a fucking jumpsuit. Like you still look like a mechanic.
Adding some pockets to it. He is pivotal throughout the entire season.
Okay.
But the company itself and the planet of Morlana 1 and all of that, much less so.
Okay. If we can. So that's our plan for Andor.
I will say when we started recording this episode, I was not anticipating this much negativity from you.
Well,
Samuel.
this is not the first time I've thought about this in the context of Star Wars. Specifically, my negative reaction, to the extent that I had an overall positive reaction to The Force Awakens, the first entry in the Disney Star Wars canon. The thing that I did not like about it was the political aspects of it. I didn't know what the actual relationship was between the New Republic, the First Order, and the Resistance. And it didn't get any better in the subsequent entries in the Disney sequel trilogy. And episode 1 of Star Wars does such a good job very quickly and easily setting up the political situation. Right away, it's the fall of the Roman Republic. An emperor is taking power from the Senate. The people here work for the emperor. And then we know that the first location that we go to is a planet outside of the jurisdiction of the powers that be. And I think that's all you need to know. And then the action just happens. And then it makes sense. The later conversations around Alderaan, and we know what Alderaan is. We know what Princess Leia, like all of those, the political context is well set up very quickly. And that's something that I look for in Star Wars because it's purportedly about a war in the stars. Wars have sides. War is the extension of politics beyond conversation. So let me know who's sitting at the table.
Well, if you want to know more about the New Republic and you don't want to read books, you can watch season 3 of The Mandalorian. It actually gives you context and more information about the New Republic.
So then are we led to believe that Jack Black and Lizzo are obliterated when Starkiller Base fires on the New Republic homeworlds?
I actually liked them being in The Mandalorian. I don't know, you might not have, but
let me say, I haven't watched any of The Mandalorian season 3. Probably should at some point just to, because I did watch seasons 1 and 2. I had, overall positive. There were some points that I could come up with in critique there, but I watched the clip or just one of the clips of Lizzo and Jack Black, and like usually Jack Black is a better actor than he was in that scene, and Lizzo cannot act at all. So maybe it's better like in the context of the actual episode, but that clip did not appetize me to watch that episode or season 3.
Again, yeah, I think I've mentioned in the last episode, I enjoy season 3 of The Mandalorian more than most people who are talking about it. You get a lot more of the Mandalorian political landscape, which I think is really interesting. It will help to have watched the Clone Wars series.
I've seen some of those with the Death Watch and with Darth Maul and
with the Vizslas and Bo-Katan, like you get more of her backstory in that. So if you can go back and watch Clone Wars before you watch season 3 of The Mandalorian, it will help you very much, well, at least appreciate the material more.
Yeah.
You don't need it to understand what's going on. They do a pretty good job of drawing the lines between the different factions, but having all of the backstory really helps your enjoyment. And that's why I think I like it more than most people, but that's for another time. Yeah. Have anything else you want to complain about episode 1 of Andor before we is there anything you liked? Because you haven't even said one thing that you've liked about it so far.
I liked the opening sequence of the brothel and the rain, and then the Andor murdering those two guys. I liked that. It was very much his introduction in Rogue One. Yeah. Which that's fine. That was a cool introduction. And then the music that was playing during kind of the ship leaving and a lot of the cinematography, the direction of that sequence reminding me a lot of Blade Runner, which I thought was interesting. I like that. As far as complaints go,
you've aired that pretty well. I think we're good.
No, I have another complaint. The children, the tribe of children. It's such a cliche thing. I was like, is this beyond Thunderdome or something? In the reality, children would all die if there were no adults around. All of those children would be dead. They would have no food. They would die of exposure and animals and disease. So sorry, unless there's a really tight explanation for why those children can survive on their own with no adults around, I will plant my flag firmly in the they'd all be dead camp.
Well, we'll find out at the end of the season.
There's no good explanation.
We'll find out. I will say, as just a teaser for the rest of the season, the goat of this series is Mr. Skarsgård.
Oh yeah, he's in it. Stellan, right?
Stellan Skarsgård. Yeah, okay. The dad of all the Skarsgårds.
For a second, I was thinking of who's the German director who was in season 1 of Mandalorian.
Oh,
it's not Lars von Trier. He directed Grizzly Man.
Yeah. I gotta Google it. I can't believe I can't think of this.
Yeah, if this were a trivia game, we would be able to come up with it in time to answer, but here we are. It's not Otto Preminger. He was the voice of Elf King.
I'm gonna say it, and we're both gonna be like, yeah, I can't believe I couldn't come up with it. Werner Herzog.
There you go. Yeah. So I thought that's who came to mind when you said Skarsgård. So I was like kind of thrown because I thought he died.
No.
And this would be earlier anyway, so never mind.
Yeah, Stellan Skarsgård in this show is phenomenal.
Okay.
And another teaser, we get Andy Serkis back in the Star Wars world in this series as well.
Oh, really?
Not playing Snoke. He plays a character named Kino Loy.
Okay. I'm not familiar with Snoke. Who is Snoke?
Are you joking?
I don't know who that is.
The Star Wars prequels? The bad guy? The clone?
Oh, him? The non-character?
Is this are you continuing to joke? I don't really understand.
I'm being a total shitbag here.
Okay, yeah.
Just because I dislike the sequels.
Yeah, that was not coming across.
Well, to be quite frank, I don't think we've talked in depth about the Star Wars stuff. We've nibbled at the edges of it, but
we've done a little.
Like I'm really negative about I think we've talked about Last Jedi to a certain extent.
Briefly.
Yeah, and how it sucks. At least that's my position.
Yeah, it does. I'll just say Rise of Skywalker, I don't think I have as much disdain for it as I do The Last Jedi. Rise of Skywalker is good for what it is, being given the story that it was given to build upon, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah. No, I think when I saw Rise of Skywalker and we talked about it for the first time, I was like, they should have made the entire sequel trilogy The Rise of Skywalker. That should have been it. The Return of the Emperor, the Emperor as the villain, it's in the novels. A lot of the novels that were out before Disney acquired Lucasfilm, they had a roadmap there for what they could do. And The Rise of Skywalker had some interesting stuff. It was just way too much stuff. It was nonstop. And like there were fun parts of that movie, and they were great.
Going to Exegol.
Yeah, like Exegol was so good. Anyway, we should actually have maybe at the end of Andor, we can talk about our feelings about the greater Star Wars, the Star Wars films. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, long story short, look forward to Andy Serkis in this season as well. He's very good.
I'm going to watch because despite, like I said, them not doing a good job, in my opinion, to craft an episode 1 that draws me in, I'm going to complete the series because
you have to.
I have to. It's mandated. It's in my contract.
Because I'm not going to talk about this show on my own.
All right. Well, that is it. We have wrapped up our discussion of episode 1 of Andor. Tune back in next week for our continuing discussion. We are going to talk about episodes 2, 3, and 4 in our next podcast. In the meantime, stay safe. Go see the Dungeons & Dragons movie again in theaters. It needs more help. Sean, do you have anything to say to our audience before we sign off?
I don't. See ya.
All right. Bye.